I had served on the Galactic Council's diplomatic staff for 37 cycles. I had witnessed trade negotiations that lasted months, seen empires rise and fall over contract disputes, and once watched Ambassador Quillnox of the Hive Collective literally molt from stress during a particularly heated debate about tariff regulations. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for the day the humans decided to send their first official representative to the council chambers. The announcement had come 3 rotations prior. Earth, that bizarre little water-logged planet in the unfashionable arm of the galaxy, had finally been granted provisional membership. Most species took centuries to earn even a temporary seat at the table. Humans had somehow managed it in less than 40 stellar years. Already, that should have been our first warning sign. I was positioned at my usual post near the crystalline observation platform when the doors to the Grand Assembly Hall began their ceremonial opening sequence. The room held representatives from 214 species. The air processors worked overtime to maintain the 17 different atmospheric requirements, creating these strange little pockets where you could actually see the environmental boundaries shimmering like heat waves on a desert planet. Everyone had heard the rumors. Earth had sent someone named Marcus Steele as their ambassador. Even the name sounded aggressive. What kind of species gives their offspring names that sound like construction materials and weaponry? The Vrelian delegate next to me, a pleasant fellow named Miptos with 6 eye stalks and a generally nervous disposition, was practically vibrating with anticipation. "Do you think the rumors are true?" Miptos whispered, 3 of his eyes fixed on the doorway. "That humans are actually from a Class 12 death world?" I made a non-committal gesture with my primary manipulator. "Classifications can be misleading, friend. I'm sure they are perfectly reasonable beings who simply evolved under slightly more challenging circumstances than most." That statement aged about as well as Glorbian milk in a supernova. The doors finished opening, and Ambassador Steele walked in. Walked. Not glided, not floated, not skittered. The human moved with this bizarre bipedal gait that somehow managed to look both casual and threatening simultaneously. He was tall, at least by most species standards, probably 2 meters or so. His species apparently kept their skeletal structure on the inside, which is just fundamentally disturbing when you really think about it. But here is the thing that made my 3 hearts skip their synchronized rhythm. Ambassador Steele was not alone. Behind him, and I am not exaggerating when I say this, came the single most terrifying creature I had ever seen in my entire existence. Another human. Bigger than the first. Broader. Wearing some kind of black tactical suit that probably violated at least 6 treaties regarding intimidation through fashion choices. The second human, whose identification badge read simply, Morgan Webb, Security Detail, had these eyes that seemed to catalog every single entity in the room within approximately 2.3 seconds. I know this because I was counting. When those eyes passed over my section, I felt my survival instinct screaming at me to flee immediately and possibly change my species while I was at it. The room, which had been filled with the usual pre-session chatter in roughly 83 different languages and communication methods, went completely silent. And I mean the kind of silence that usually only happens right before someone declares war or a star goes supernova. Ambassador Trevik of the Pale Alliance, a species that had evolved from apex predators on their own world and generally feared nothing, actually took a step backward. "Greetings, esteemed members of the Galactic Council," Ambassador Steele said, his voice carrying across the chamber with unnecessary clarity. Humans apparently did not require translation devices for basic galactic standard. They just learned languages. Like that was a normal thing to do. "I'm honored to represent Earth and humanity in these proceedings. This is Morgan Webb, my security specialist." Security specialist. What a delightfully benign term for what was clearly a living weapon. High Chancellor Vriala, who led the council and had seen roughly everything in her 400 years of service, managed to maintain her composure. "Mostly. Ambassador Steele, while we appreciate your attendance, I must inquire about the necessity of bringing armed security to a diplomatic gathering. We have extensive protection protocols in place. Morgan Webb did not move. Did not speak. Just stood there like a monument to controlled violence. Ambassador Steele smiled. Humans apparently bare their teeth as a sign of friendliness, which is possibly the most contradictory evolutionary adaptation I have ever encountered. I assure you, Chancellor, Morgan is simply here to ensure my safety. After all, this is my first time addressing the Council, and Earth has made some powerful friends and equally powerful rivals in our short time on the galactic stage. I'd hate for any misunderstandings to occur. Misunderstandings. Right. The kind that might end with someone attempting assassination, presumably. Your request is highly irregular, Vriala continued, her scales shifting to a concerned purple hue. No ambassador has ever required personal security within these chambers. Well, Ambassador Steele replied, his smile never wavering, humans have a saying. Better safe than sorry. That was when things got interesting. Council member Draxith, a hulking representative from the Kryn Dominion who had built his political career on opposing human admission to the Council, rose from his seated position. The Kryn were known for their aggressive nature and military prowess, having conquered 17 systems through what they called forceful diplomacy. Draxith stood nearly 3 meters tall, covered in thick armored hide that could supposedly withstand plasma fire, and possessed 4 arms that ended in claws capable of rending most metals. This is preposterous, Draxith's voice boomed across the chamber, his translator adding an extra layer of menace to his already intimidating tone. The human insults this council by suggesting our security is inadequate. Perhaps this is simply another example of why your species should not have been granted even provisional status. You lack the basic civility required for civilized discourse. The tension in the room went from uncomfortable to absolutely suffocating. Several smaller delegates actually began moving toward the exits. Miptos next to me had gone completely rigid, all 6 eye stalks locked onto the unfolding confrontation. Ambassador Steele's smile faded just slightly. Council member Draxith, I assure you, no insult was intended. However, I find it curious that you speak of civility when your own delegation includes 12 armed guards stationed throughout this very chamber. Oh, stars above. He had actually counted them. I glanced around and realized he was absolutely correct. Kryn soldiers were positioned at strategic points around the hall, trying to blend in but failing spectacularly. Draxith's eyes narrowed to dangerous slits. Those are ceremonial honor guards, as per our cultural traditions. Your bodyguard is clearly a military operative. Morgan is a security specialist, Ambassador Steele corrected, his voice remaining perfectly pleasant despite the rising hostility. There's a difference. Perhaps, Draxith said, taking a deliberate step forward, we should test how effective your security specialist truly is. That was the moment everything changed. Morgan Webb moved. Not dramatically, not with any obvious threat, but there was this subtle shift in posture that every predatory species in the room recognized instantly. The human's hand did not go to any visible weapon. Did not need to. The message was crystal clear without a single word being spoken. Come find out. High Chancellor Vriala's scales had now shifted to bright red, which in her species indicated severe alarm. Council member Draxith, you will stand down immediately. This is a place of diplomacy, not a gladiatorial arena. But Draxith was apparently committed to his terrible decision-making. I merely wish to demonstrate to this council that humans, despite their bravado, are nothing more than soft mammals who have stumbled into technology beyond their comprehension. He moved. Fast. Faster than something his size had any right to move. His 4 arms reached for Ambassador Steele, claws extended. What happened next took approximately 2.7 seconds, though several delegates later swore it felt like both an eternity and an instant simultaneously. Morgan Webb intercepted Draxith mid-lunge. One moment the Kryn warrior was in motion, the next he was flat on the polished floor with Morgan's knee pressed against his primary spine cluster and one arm locked at an angle that made my own manipulators ache in sympathy. The human security specialist had moved so efficiently, so precisely, that most of the room had not even registered the action until it was over. Council member Draxith is experiencing a temporary restriction of movement for his own safety and the safety of Ambassador Steele, Morgan stated calmly, as if restraining a 3-meter-tall armored warrior was equivalent to filing paperwork. He will be released unharmed once he indicates his willingness to resume diplomatic protocols. The silence that followed was somehow even more profound than before. Draxith, to his credit or perhaps his shame, immediately signaled submission. Morgan released him and stepped back to his position behind Ambassador Steele as if nothing whatsoever had occurred. Ambassador Steele adjusted his jacket. "Now then, Chancellor, shall we proceed with the agenda? I believe there were some trade agreements to discuss regarding the Outer Rim territories." High Chancellor Vriala stared at the human ambassador for a long moment, her scales cycling through at least 7 different colors before settling on a resigned yellow. "Yes, Ambassador Steele. Let us proceed." As the session continued and various delegates nervously returned to their business, I found myself reassessing everything I thought I knew about humans. They had not just brought a bodyguard to make a statement. They had brought a reminder. A very specific, very deliberate reminder that humanity might be new to the galactic stage, but they were not naive. They were not unprepared. And they certainly were not to be underestimated. Miptos leaned toward me, his eyestalks still trembling slightly. "I think I need to revise my assessment of Class 12 Deathworlds." I watched as Ambassador Steele calmly discussed shipping routes and resource allocation while Morgan Webb stood silent and vigilant behind him, those calculating eyes never stopping their assessment of potential threats. "I think," I replied quietly, "we all do." The humans had arrived. And the galaxy, whether it was ready or not, would never be quite the same again. Sometimes the most powerful statement is not made with weapons or threats or grand declarations. Sometimes it is made by simply standing your ground and letting everyone else wonder exactly what you are capable of if pushed. Earth had sent that message loud and clear. The Council had received it. Message understood. Friends, if you are enjoying our videos and want to watch new and exciting sci-fi and HFY stories every day, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Also, make sure to turn on the bell icon so you never miss any of our latest uploads. Like the video and share it with your friends as well, so our community can continue to grow and bring you even more amazing content.